Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mordhau podcast, Ep.4. Today, with me, I am joined by Trench Dog. He was the voice actor for several of the voices you know and love in Mordhau, including Young and Cruel, as well as both the engineer and the instructor in the tutorial. Welcome, Trench Dog.
Thank you. Yeah, that was all the voice work I've done so far for Mordhau, and it was pretty fun stuff doing. For those of you who might also want to know what my real name is, Kai McKenzie. You could also just call me Kai. That works too.
Alrighty, well, welcome to the show, man. So, what I'm eager to kind of pick your brain about is a little bit of how you got into that project, like what was your origin story, if you will, and then what drew you to that project, as well as the process, like the creation process, what that looked like, and then kind of what you've been up to since then, and then we can obviously go on tangents as we see fit throughout that. But that's like the general plan.
Yeah, sure. Well, this might come as a surprise to people, but before I answer that question, I'll preface it with this. In my experience with voice acting, a lot of creative projects like this, whether it's writing or like people who are into 3D modeling, especially on the indie scene,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of projects is sort of like a link up sort of thing. It's a connection sort of thing where like one guy who's working on a project, like oh I heard that a role of this needs to be supported or whatever. Like this project needs a coder for like C sharp or this project needs whatever. That is a very common practice within the indie market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with any sort of game, and that's exactly what happened to me with this Project Mordhau. I did have interest in it. I heard a little bit of it prior to voicing in it from Skullagram,
Mm-hmm.
from his YouTube channel. He had his promotion and the memes with the pommel throwing and all that
Yeah.
diddle hickory whatever. But really, it was is I got this job because I knew George Exley, who was a British voice actor. Very cool fellow. I've known him since about 2013. He's the one who kind of said like, "Hey, there's some extra roles or whatever. I'll introduce you to the team and whatever." And it was just very informal. A lot of it was done over Discord sort of deal. And yeah, I just talked to them that way. Some emails were passed back and forth here and there for some official verification stuff I can't go too much into, but a lot of it was just informal hookup, in a
Gotcha.
way.
That's cool. So what so okay, you heard about the project and you just said I want to do whatever they'll put me in, basically. Is that kind of the approach?
A little bit. It's kind of like a thing where like I know they needed when I was talking to buddy there whatchamacallit, he's no longer on the Discord, so trying to remember his username is a bit. I have a bit of a disassociation with names. That's one
Yeah, no worries.
one blessing I have. But whatchamacallit, starts with an M. It was let me just look for my Discord contacts. It was like heck. I talked to Spook, and then there was what was his name? I'm trying to remember. It was like something M. I
Merox?
want to. Marox, yeah, that was it. I was
There it
thinking like
is.
Max or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Marox, yeah, my goodness. Yeah, he no longer uses Discord, so like my brain was just having a big potato brain fart there baked in
Mhm.
the oven too long. But yeah, Marox was the main guy I talked to, and we were just discussing scripts, and he handed me like a back in the day, he handed me sort of like a prototype script where, hey, we need some more voice presets.
Mhm.
This stuff is going to be used in game, and I got the game gifted to me for free to try out and stuff like that, and I still have the game and I still play it fairly regularly, off and on. I play it. I've got like, oh, let me look on Steam right quick. It's like something like six, probably more than 60 at this point, maybe like 100 plus hours. I don't know, but modest amount of hours on that. So like yeah, I tried out just getting into the game. I went on dual servers first just to understand how people use the lines, and that was part of my research. And then I thought to myself, okay, they handed me a script, and it was very freestyle. Where like I was hired as a freelancer, and they were very liberal with the whole process of determining how the script was. They provide you a template, what
Mhm.
sort of lines you had, and they pre-written some stuff, but it's kind of generic what the lines are. Some of those lines I voiced and kept, and then some of them I invented a character, persona for it. And I do this. I notice I do this in a lot of different projects. I voice acted in Day of Infamy, Warfare Online, but and other stuff like that.
Oh wow.
Where, yeah, you come up with a character. Every voice actor is a little bit different in how they approach things. I know George has his own mythology, like his own mythology or what have you. I'm
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
mispronouncing and butchering that word, but you get my point.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, I like to invent a character. I like to give him a bit of a backstory, a little bit of research. Obviously, with this case with Mordhau, it's in a fictional setting. It's low fantasy, where it's very much like besides like the horde bosses like fire imps and that goofy giant and whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty grounded. It's a pretty grounded setting.
Mhm.
So like I just kind of looked at contemporary medieval stuff. I did a little bit of a thinker on archetypes and was like, okay, I want to do like a young peasant sort of guy, sort of like, come here, lads, sort of like that, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah. That
yeah,
was really
sort of
good.
like
Holy
it's
shit.
all like a voice like this. So it's all like a Cockney voice where he sounds like he grew up in a city where it smelled of shit and all sorts of things. They try to wheel out the dead, Monty Python style, and
I
that
love
sort of
that.
thing.
God, that's
Yeah, so
captivating.
yeah, so like you kind of get into the idea where these characters come from, and then for the cruel voice, it's sort of like a sort of snivelling. I don't like sniveling cowards before my feet. I like to see them quiver in fear. A sadistic knight I may be, but I am of much higher status than you. Sort of that very
Uh-huh.
sultry, dark sounding knight. Someone who is full of pomp and arrogance. I thought of like very some historical characters in history who were very much like that. Like I looked at the Hundred Years' War. I looked at some other things. I looked at our sources too, like Berserk, like the manga Berserk and the
Mhm.
subsequent anime releases and stuff like that, and other things. And I just kind of invented a character where it was sort of like a Mordred inspired Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur sort of thing, where
Mhm.
uh, cruel knight. And then for the instructor, it was a lot more loose. I just thought of, okay, what's a very earthy, down. What would be a very good voice that sounds very down to earth, very earthy, would be a great instructor, would kind of keep people's attention, but wouldn't intimidate them unnecessarily,
Mhm.
ease them into the game, while still like snapping them to attention because you don't want the guy to be a pansy ass mofo,
Right,
right?
right,
You
right,
want him
right.
to, yeah. So that voice is a little bit harder to get into character, but it's basically just a sort of swarthy Irish Hagrid sounding voice, sort of like you're a wizard now, Harry. You know, sort of like, sort of like, all right, that's enough sightseeing for now. Eyes on me, you two. I need you to pay attention and not be fapping right in the corner. You understand me now, right? Sort
Mhm.
of
Mhm. Mhm.
voice like that, right? So no fappery involved
Yeah,
in
it's
the
kind of funny.
instructor's camp.
It in a weird way, you were the first person I ever met in Mordhau.
Mm.
Because like I was just a random guy who thought the game looked cool and picked it up on Steam. I had no prior background or anything, so my very first experience was just you teaching me how to play the game.
Yeah, it's like I remember something silly. Someone recognized me on the Mordhau game, and admittedly, that's not a very common occurrence because I'm very low key for the most part with
Yeah, I would imagine.
most of the time because like it's not that I don't mind attention. It's mostly just because like I don't like I just want to play the game and smash some goddamn heads and you know whatever. Could give a shit about promoting myself
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
most of the time. Fucking but what was I saying? Yeah, like someone called me like their sensei and I fucking I know I've butchered that word before. So anyone who like is like extreme weeb or an actual Japanese person, I apologize in advance. But either way, and some less. I'll repeat it once, but I know it's gonna haunt me from here on out. Someone called me instructor daddy, and I'm never ever gonna repeat that ever
Oh
again.
God. Oh
But
no.
there's your fresh meme, I guess. There's your piece of meat to throw on the table. But
I approve. I
yeah,
must say.
no, it's kind of cool that that's people's first impression of the game. Some swarthy Irishman like shooting the piss at them and teaching them how to, well, swing a bladed object basically at some piece
Yeah,
of hay,
exactly.
basically.
That's sick. See, for me, I remember.
The
Uh,
engineer, the engineer is sort of like George is kind of similar, where the engineer for me was a leftover voice, or not leftover, but like I've used that type of voice before.
gotcha.
It was
Okay.
completely new. But the young one I only used in another World War I type project. The engineer was a sort of like a sort of Scottish sounding voice like this. Sounds like he pissed in your cereal. Maybe you pissed in his sort of deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So take a shot every time I say sort of deal. But
Mm-hmm.
the whole chat will be plastered, not able to move after this. But whatchamacallit? Yeah, that was the origin of the engineer. Just wanted something angry sounding, something that would provoke a laugh, something that sounded really proper pissed off because
Yeah, I remember
you're
the engineer in particular jumped out at me as like the inflection was really well done. It was like they kind of it almost has this like downward trajectory. Does that make any sense? Like you kind of come
he's
down while
speaking
you're
down to
angry.
you.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
also like it's like um it kind of comes down. I need to find the sample, but it's like at the risk of embarrassing myself, it's like it kind of comes downward as you finish your lines when you're like angry, whereas a lot of like American accents would go up, you know?
Yeah, like it grows deeper. Like naturally, I can go a high pitched voice, but my
Right.
normal cadence is pretty. Well, you hear me talking right
Yeah, of
now a
course.
little bit. Yeah, fucking husky sounding Canadian, even though I'm only like 150 pounds or something like that. I'm not actually that big of a guy. I'm like 5'11", 6 foot, fucking 150 pounds. So I'm kind of a lean dude
I mean, it's
for the
a
most part.
I mean, your voice makes you money. You can't really ask for anything more, can you?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like I'm a voice prostitute, man. I gotta sell myself somehow, right? Like it's just this world's cruel, cold, and it's full of weird people. So like I might as well be one of the weird people making money, right? So
Exactly. Of course.
yeah. But
Although I don't even think voice acting is anything to be ashamed of. I think that's a cool career, at least for people in my generation. Like, I don't know many people my age that would be like, "What a weirdo! Is a voice actor." Haha.
well, I don't even think we're that old, that much older or difference of age because like what
Well, I'm
you're,
not even saying that we're different in
yeah,
age. I'm just saying neither of us are like boomers that are like,
yeah. We're not like, oh, you're a voice actor. You voice act
yeah,
in cartoons.
right, yeah,
Your job is laughable. It's just like it's like that one Ren and Stimpy episode or whatever where it's like the one kid's dad who looks like Governor what's that guy from Metal Gear Rising
oh god,
Governor what's his freaking name? The guy with the forehead the size of a football field.
I think I know who
Who
you're talking about.
played college ball? Governor Armstrong. Yeah, that was it.
Mhm.
Yeah, Governor Armstrong. Like this guy looks like Governor Armstrong in a Ren and Stimpy cartoon, and he's like pulling a chair,
Yeah,
and he's just like saying, "So you make people laugh, huh? You're from Hollywood." And he's like getting all in their case, right?
Mhm.
We don't. Neither of us are like that, but I've definitely like encountered people
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. It's like you do what? You went from construction and sheet metal to to spewing sounds in a microphone. Oh, okay, you're a bum, I guess. You live at home.
Yeah, I just feel like
Okay.
that's like a proto or prehistoric way of thinking, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's as much I'll say on that. It's something that is changing pretty rapidly though. And then like not to age discrepancy as well. I've received praise from people of that generation too, right? Because they find it badass too, right? Just to clarify that not all boomers are bad. There's
Correct.
plenty of cool
Correct.
ones out there too. But yeah. Whatchamacallit? So, what are questions you got loaded in that barrel for me there?
Yeah. So, how did you find yourself voice acting? That's one that instantly comes to mind.
Well, I kind of alluded to it already, with the sheet metal bit. So, in my case, I didn't have no formal education or nothing, next to nothing in terms of training or anything of the sort with voice acting. Like, I took drama in high school for like 2 years, and then I burned out. I kind of like pissed off from that because the drama teacher was like kind of a slave driver, and yeah, if you're watching this, Mr. Narabesky, you're mm, whatever. He taught his class well, but we didn't get along. Personality conflict. But anywho, that's ancient news and drama. Anywho, drama. But friggin', I grew up in Canada, Alberta.
Mhm.
I came from relatively modest family. Got crapped on. My dad died when I was a teenager, and
Oh
then there was a
man.
survival from there on. But I entered the workforce, semi workforce when I was a teen, and then when I was in high school, I did okay with my grades, but I had no aspirations for university because it costed an arm and a leg to get into that stuff,
Yeah, of
right? So
course.
I just went into I went into sheet metal. But the one thing that was always a good source of escapism for me was video games, writing,
Mm.
arts, stuff like
Mhm.
that. I always liked drawing. Drawing right now, or was drawing. I'm kind of focused on talking right
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm a little bit of a simple creature where I can't focus on too many things at once. I thought I would, but it's just like I'm an amoeba in the greater scale of
Hmm.
things. But whatchamacallit? So I entered the workforce with sheet metal. Then the layoffs in 2014 hit. Oil prices, and not to get too political, I'm going to sum it up for you folks who aren't aware of the situation here in my province. Oil basically sucked a giant donkey dong, and it went down the toilet. There's a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into it for now, but the economy was sucking eggs since then. So for me, I took odd jobs here and there, but even during sheet metal and even during high school, I was playing in a lot of mods for RTSs like Command and Conquer, Zero Hours, Rise of the Reds, made by the Hunter, otherwise known as Andre Losen.
You were
The
acting in those,
Hunter
just to be clear, or playing in them, or what? What was your relationship?
playing first, and then I decided, hey, I want to contribute to these mods. So these were like RTS mods for Command and Conquer
Gotcha.
games.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So like they added new factions, new units, the whole works, right? And I'm just like, well, what can actually feasibly contribute? I know I can vary my voice. That's always something I always just used to dick around with and whatever. And I liked just embracing different accents, and I've always loved history. So like I always try to like learn languages a little bit, even if it's just the accent, like sort of heavy Russian accent like this. Tak tak tovarish. Yeah,
Oh
like
wow.
ye gotov tovarish. Like, or just like tu hables en español, señor. Like
Wow.
I just like that sort of thing. But when it comes to that, I decided, well, they don't need an artist. I don't know next to nothing about coding. I was never good at mathematics, and I know coding isn't really mathematics. It's just more like just understanding another language. And I'm actually trying to learn that and Blender right now, but I'm rambling a little bit. So I decided, well, I can get a microphone. I'll invest in what was then the Blue Yeti, which hadn't exploded in popularity yet.
Mhm.
It's a little bit, for anyone getting into the voice acting industry nowadays, I don't recommend the Blue Yeti simply because, not because it's a bad microphone, but it's overpriced now because every Tom, Dick, Harry from ASMR type people like spewing whatever in your ear to like uh, Joe and his YouTube and Twitch stream and
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
everyone's got that microphone and it's overinflated the price. Like an AT 2020 would be good, and there's a few other microphones, but I'll cover that later for anyone who's interested.
Sure.
Um, I got the Blue Yeti though. I started voice acting in this mod, and it was typically they added the European Confederation, which is sort of like a militaristic successor to the EU. They had all their lore and stuff like that in that game, and then they had the Russian Federation. So like, I had my voice acting stints, my first stints with this mod. I was just working for free. And then the number of years after was a mixture of hobbyist mods like that. And I jumped from games like Mountain Blade Warband, I did some voice acting for, and like Perisno, Nova Aetus, Fires of War,
Mhm.
just to name a few mods in there. And at this point, I've voice acted in every single Command and Conquer mod under the sun, maybe barring some Tiberium Wars 3 mods at
Wow,
this
that's
point.
awesome.
But Rattler 2, like Mental Omega, Rise of the Reds, Twisted Insurrection, and like a few other smaller ones like Attack as Superior and stuff like that I voiced in. And I just invested into my equipment and my setup over the years. And then
Mhm.
I started getting games here and there. My first, and then animation wise, I jumped into the Emperor Texas Beat series because I was a fan of Warhammer 40K and I watched Alpha Buse's videos. And if you guys haven't checked out his channel yet, or you're not aware of the Warhammer 40K universe or whatever, check out Alpha Busa on YouTube. I'll send some links after this
Yeah, for
with
sure.
those links if you're interested. And I voiced some characters like Vulcan, uh, Horus, Magos Grus, Typhus, and some other ones here and there. But over the years, and I got some gigs with video games. The first big video game I got really involved with, where I got paid commission money, was Day of Infamy by New World Interactive.
They're the guys who made
They
Insurgency,
were the
correct?
first ones who hired me. Mike E, the creative director of that, was pretty cool.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
It was just sort of like, and I met George actually, the guy who hooked me up in this project via Rise of the Red. So like we've known each other. I've known him ever since like I got into voice acting sort of deal, and he kind of had a similar path to me. He jumped into the professional market a little bit. He was involved in voice acting a little bit longer than me by about 2 years. So I learned some things off of him. I would dare say to call him that he's a bit of a mentor for me. So he has
Mhm.
guided me a little bit here and there. So, and then we just kind of tagged each other back and forth, like, oh, hey, I know this project that needs a British voiceover or whatever. Or hey, like, he'll
Gotcha.
like yoink me. So that's kind of just how it's been. And then same thing with other voice actors and specialists. If they hear something, like, we throw ropes for each other, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of
Because
like
we're all peasants. We can't afford agents.
right. You stick together though, and that's
But
good because it also helps people who are
go ahead.
creatives looking for voice actors to be on a project. They kind of because voice actors. It sounds like you guys kind of come in clumps to an
You said
extent.
looking, and that's the last I heard.
Oh, sorry. So, um, it sounds like any creatives who are looking for uh people to be voice actors in their projects, it's not as difficult for them to find voice actors because they kind of come in clumps, if you will,
A
or
little bit,
just
yeah. It's like a string thing. Like, mind you, that this is a thing where not every voice actor has, and especially starting out. I kind of lucked out in that regard where I established some good friendships with mods and stuff. Nowadays, you can still find opportunities like that. Don't get me wrong, but like for starter voice actors, who go on casting call or voicesforum.com and whatever, where they're auditioning for projects,
Mhm.
you have to either have a really standout voice for the role you're doing, and or really good audio quality, because there is a sea of amateur hobbyist voice actors out there, and connections is one way you can bypass that at this point. And honestly, it kind of rings true even for the big boys like Steve Bloom, John DiMaggio, Tara Strawn. She's a big girl in that sense, whatever. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
giants in the industry. Even for legends like that, David Hayter and so forth, all of them, they have the Hollywood clique, I like to call them, and like it's not necessarily because they're in thousands of projects and stuff like that, but they get hired onto it seriously because it's this a matter of, oh, I've heard that you were in this project, and oh, my buddy has heard this and this. And Hollywood is very much a clique like that, and that's why it's
Right.
dominated by. And you see this in film too, where Hollywood has its cast of actors that they hand around different films and stuff. And these people might not even be as wealthy as you think. Like Samuel L. Jackson, for example.
Hmm.
He's a very prolific and very good actor, but you don't he's not actually super rich. Like he's well off, definitely, but like he has a part-time job in a grocery store. Just saying.
Really, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yep. A lot of these actors, some of them definitely make a lot of money and live in mansions, and like some of them have crippling sort of addictions. And I'm not going to touch on any names here, but needless to say, uh, it's a clique, however you want to pronounce that word, and it's very much the same thing where you have to kind of develop that sense of connection
Uh-huh.
with voice acting for sure.
It seems like in most industries, networking is key for anything entertainment related, including even like this is a little bit of a parallel, but talking about esports or sports or whatever as well. Sometimes it's good to have connections to people because in any time, in any environment, you're trying to advertise that you have talent that needs to be in demand. The best way to go about getting that demand to be there is by people knowing you exist. Like that's like the first step. So that's kind of why networking can be key in a lot of these situations, in
Yeah,
my
and like you
experience.
got to make sure you shout at the right time, at the right moment, and to the right people because we are there is 8 billion people on this planet. The
Mhm.
entertainment industry is larger than it has ever been in the history of mankind. We
Mhm.
have instant communication where a fart can be transmitted into your ears at the very moment it comes out of someone's arse. You know,
Right.
we are at that stage of technology. We have reached instant fart communication.
Mhm.
It's a whole new level where back in the day, if a king wanted to hear if the king wanted to do a pull my finger joke and whatever, he would have to send a messenger, and that messenger would have to go for 2 months to the next kingdom just so that King George V can go contact King Louis XVI and say, "Ha ha ha! I have evacuated my bowels, good sir." Ha
Yeah,
ha
I know.
ha! You know, right? So
Yeah.
like nowadays the shit posting is at a whole new level. You don't have to wait for 2 months for a message to arrive, or even the when the radio and the
Right.
phone telecommunication and whatnot that allowed instant communication and it was a revolution in its own right. But you were still limited by you were still limited a lot by infrastructure and by the limitations of the technology. Now we have phones where we can like used to just be like, okay, I talk in this end and then the sound comes out to the other person. Nowadays we can like plan our funerals, our own funerals with the phones. We can look up funny hamster and rat videos. We can do all sorts of crap basically and
Right.
things, right? But
And they
uh,
kind of ignore the conventions of time too. Like you can have messages that are going to happen in the future. Basically, like with radio, it was almost like a pager. Like they were either on the other end ready to receive your message or not. Whereas now, you can like
yeah,
leave people notes to check later from across the planet. So
pretty
it's like
much. And
there's
you can
just
have
this
like 8
guarantee.
conversations at once. And like, I grew up with technology as much as you did, but like,
Hmm.
I still kind of step back and think, oh, holy crap, these machines are a lot more capable than I am. Like, these machines can do all this and this and this. And like, I can count to 5 in 5 seconds.
Well, they can't do voice acting.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you say that, but we already have voice replication technology, right? And that also is going to be a whole hoodlum of like, okay, when I die and my likeness is going to be used in a film or audio wise, um, where does the money go to for that? My next of kin? You know, I know for Star Wars they had to do something like that because they had Buddy there. He was recreated completely through CGI
Wow. I know Paul Walker was
over many
in that
score of years,
situation
right?
for,
So
yeah.
it had to go to his estate, to his next of kin. So we're getting in the point where holograms and uh, replicated voices and imagery of once living people and actors, where we could have Clint Eastwood in his prime. Clint Eastwood in his prime. Not that he's dead right now, and fuck forbid that he dies now, because that would be a sad year. But Clint Eastwood in his prime, uh, acting as Solid Snake from in a Metal Gear Solid movie, for example. We
Right.
could do stuff like that now. We have the technology, right?
It's expensive, but possible.
So, yeah. But not to derail your
No,
interview
no, I
with me
enjoy these
here.
little tangents.
What's your next? What's the next bullet?
All
What's the
right,
next
let's
bullet
see.
you gonna fire at me?
Yeah, we have. Okay, so I would be curious to hear your perspective on the role voice acting will play going into the future. Do you see it becoming a larger or a smaller profession or staying steady? And I'll give my perspective on it just real quick before we start. So,
Sure.
to me, I see a world where digital is becoming more not rampant, but just prevalent. That's the word. So digital everything, whether it be um, like live action that uses animation as a substitute for actual parts, whatever else. But it seems like as we are able to synthesize more and more, we still lack the ability to synthesize original voices. So we can't have like a bot that we input stuff into. We say, I want a snarky Scottish man, and you just hit enter, and then it just says your lines with the perfect accent. Like that doesn't exist yet. But
The
at the same time,
inflections.
right.
Yeah, the inflections and stuff. That said, I wouldn't be surprised within 5 or something years that might be possible. Let's hope not, otherwise I'm out of a job. But yeah, I still don't think bots are going to replace actual voice actors though, because you need any sort of entertainment, any sort of like entertainment spark, no matter how intelligent the AI is, unless they become sentient. But at that point, they're people anyways, so that spark is there anyways, so it won't matter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you need that creative spark in any sense of creative outlet, any form of artistic expression, whether it's a video game, a painting, animation, a play, for
Mm-hmm.
example. You need that sense of that fluidity that a person brings. It's the subtle nuances of emotion and stuff like that. Because, like, funny enough, I can't voice act robots worth dick. Like, I've tried, but he's like, "Oh yeah, there's too much emotion, too much emotion. Car, you need to have less emotion." And I'm just like, so like me talking like, must complete order now, and that's apparently too much. Or that's too much emotion. It's like they want me to be like they want me to be a UCP member or something
Well,
like
it's
that.
like, to be completely honest with you, that sounded like a person sarcastically pretending to be a robot, which is
Yeah,
pretty much what was
exactly.
happening.
Like too much emotion. I'm too animated, right? Like I'm
Right. Not
just
that that's a bad thing. It sets you up perfectly for a
yeah.
lot of the other roles that you play because most people are not animated enough to actually voice act. So that's
Yeah,
another
it's
thing. From what I understand about voice acting, there's kind of this understood expectation of over exaggeration whenever you're speaking. Like voice actors are not acting your average voice. Anybody could do that. They're acting an accentuated and exaggerated version of a stereotype in most cases.
to a
Uh,
point. It depends on the medium. You're definitely right in most cases. Voice acting is sort of like a thing where you definitely take the accentuations of the character you're playing, but sometimes some voice acting can be really subtle. It can be really emotional. To kind of give a shout out to where there's a good mix between the pendulum of exaggeration, hyperbole, and then the subtle emotional type qualities and realistic sense of emotions that
yeah, it
people
has to be
portray, like
grounded. Well, it doesn't
average
have to be, but
speaking. I'll probably get some flack and praise either way from this, but Has Been Hotel. That's an example of an animation series that has where you have the crazy eccentricities of characters, where some of them are just batshit insane, and then sometimes they'll speak relatively low key.
mhm.
You know, it's just you have that balance there. Um, but whatchamacallit? Take another shot. Take a hoot or a shot every time I say whatchamacallit. You'll be proper drunk.
Schmammered.
Yeah, proper schmammered. Schmammered and hammered,
Yeah.
turned into ham, sort of deals. Yeah, we'll all be food items by the end of this stream.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
think part of the beauty of voice acting to me is it's almost a faceless form of acting in the sense of you have to convey all of the nuance. Well, not all of it, but you have to convey more nuance with your voice than you would normally do with your entire body when performing in a scene as like an actor. Like a lot of what you're conveying, obviously, it's part of like the however your character is portrayed in conjunction with your voice, but a good chunk of it lies on the voice itself.
Yes, that is true. Although I have two things to say. One being thank fuck that no one can see me. So to do like I don't have stage fright or anything like that. I can get up on. I was able to get up on the stage, and I'm fine doing public speech type shit. I don't get too much anxiety with that. But
Mhm.
I'm just like, who the fuck wants to see me in like a house robe and pajamas voice acting? Because
Right.
I'll be honest, I'm in my comfort zone. I'm in my own. I have my own home studio and everything. I've recently renovated as well. Like I've got a proper big booth, nice office with wood floors and everything, a nice desk. Like I've invested in this son bitch, right? It's good now. But like the second thing I want to point out is that while the voice does carry and while you would kind of exaggerate, at the same time, an optimal setting for setup for voice acting. My booth is about I'd say about 4 feet wide and maybe about 6 feet tall, give or take. Six feet 2 inches, around
Mm.
there, right? Um, or like 190 or 200 centimeters tall, and like you get the idea. Anywho, it's a big open space. It's completely padded. My microphone's not in there right now, but it's open enough where I can animate myself because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
voice actors are almost become instantly Italian, where they move their hands, you move your shoulders, you move your body
Well, yeah,
as you're voice acting.
you're exaggerating all of the nuance in the communication.
Definitely, like you definitely want to. The movements may not always be super big or not, whatever, because you got to keep a pretty level thing. But if you watch like Jim Cummings or any person who's voice acted like recordings. Like a very good example is the Legacy of Kane outtake reels or like voice acting film, which is a great series by the way. I love Legacy of Kane with Raziel and Kane himself and all the characters. You had like Tony J and other big giant titans of the industry. Who are involved in that project, but you'll see that in the videos of them, they're they're clenching their fists. Like when I do the cruel voice or like I need help now. When I'm doing that, I'm clenching my fists like I'm claw form. I'm
Yeah,
claw
exactly.
form and like
Because you're kind
I'm
of
like
that voice is like I almost want to say tight. I don't know if that's the right word. It's just like there's like this.
tense.
Yeah, tense. That's the word. Yes.
That's the word.
It feels like you like the cruel character is very tense in all
He has
moments.
to stick up his ass 24/7, and
Yes.
he wants to trot around and make sure that the peasants know it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
He's a complete dickhead. There's no way around it.
You need to
He's
do. You should do a short where the young and cruel people get into an argument. I think that would be hilarious, just because of the dichotomy of the two. You have
sure. Sort of like So, sir, I was trying to get that catapult there in the middle of the field, but then some goofball came about and threw a firebomb at me, and then he said he laughed at me and he walked away. It was terrible, sir. You did what now? You moved the catapult into the middle of the field without my express permission, and then it got sabotaged by a drunken, blathering idiot. Is that what you're telling me right now? No, sir. I was just trying to move it closer to the enemy so I could shoot, you see. You moved it closer to the... It is a catapult, you fool! You are supposed to fire it from range! How's that?
That was phenomenal. Holy cow. I got goosebumps, I
So
can't lie.
So like yeah, like you just roll with it. A lot of it's just bullshit. Voice acting is being a master of bullshit. I have a PhD in bullshit. It's great. Like I'm pretty sure my a shout out to my buddy Jared. You're probably watching this stream right now. I know you've been texting me over Discord, you mofo. Um, cool guy, Jared. He's a personal friend of mine. Um, he knows I am the master of bullshit. I have a PhD. That motherfucker's known me since like grade 1, and I remember we used to beat each other up on the slides and throw each other down, give each other nosebleeds sort of thing, and then we became buds. Most of my friends I have either physically been assaulted by or physically assaulted them, and then we became the best of buddies. I don't understand it either. But yeah, psychotic Albertan childhoods aside. What's next in that chamber of yours? That revolver of yours.
hmm Um, let's see. I I gotta go find it. I think I have.
He's got to find the list, folks.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
hidden somewhere
yeah.
in the temple of what was a good Aztec pseudo Aztec sounding name? Like yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. Yeah, drawing a blank a hootle. So
Okay, so here's another piece that I was just curious about. I know you've mentioned it a little bit, but what would you point to as like your inspiration that you draw from in two ways? One, how do you get inspired when it comes to voice acting, if at all, or is it kind of just pure freestyle? And also, did you find anything as direct inspiration for like these characters in the creation of that? I know they're not truly characters, but like how, like what, I guess what I'm asking is what percentage of these voices was you versus the developers? Like, did they just kind of come to you and say, all right, do two voices, good luck? Or was it more, we want like this young sounding peasant who is pretty naive and a bit clumsy, or like that whole process?
uh yeah. I kind of described it a little bit earlier, but I'll kind of expand upon it now. It varies between projects. Every director is different. They all have their own different personalities. Every team's different. In the case of Mordhau, I've definitely done projects where they wanted a character to be done to the letter. Mordhau was not one of those. I'm not saying that Mordhau. They definitely touched base with me, and they gave me like a proto script,
Uh-huh.
but for the most part, the artistic liberties of actually making the script was my own penmanship. Was my own. I wrote all my lines for the most part. They had like some example lines, like some generic ones,
Uh-huh.
and then as a voice actor, I took that, ran with it, made my characters as I stated. I was kind of inspired by history in this case. I looked at medieval history and archetypes surrounding that, like cruel, sadistic knights who grew up in pomp and they have a very low opinion of human life. These sort of like simple, humble countryside city lads with that Cockney accent for the young. And then the Irish one was that swarthy, as I mentioned. But in terms of overall inspiration with voice acting, in general, as a career, I think it's is I definitely like everyone else here on in this planet in this stream probably. I definitely had different goals in mind when I was a kid. I thought, oh, I did by 24 years old, which is how old I am now, by the way. 24 years old, I would be like an archaeologist somewhere or whatever. No, that never happened because you need to be really good at the sciences to be an archaeologist and whatever. That dreams and goals change over time, but I think the one consistent thing is I've always loved the different voices in cartoons like Red Wall, different video games like the Assassin's Creed series, Metal Gear Solid, you name it, right? Spyro, all the voice acting and different cartoons that we grew up with, just knowing like hearing the different voices and being very attentive to it and then trying out the voices myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I mentioned earlier with the the mods, the hobbyist projects, jumping into that. What can I provide? Well, I have a voice and I'm good at bullshitting, so let's just roll on from there, right? So the inspiration was definitely like all those media sources, and I think this generation in particular, like the one born from the early 90s and into the 2000s and beyond at this point too, I'd argue,
Mm-hmm.
is definitely one that is was definitely influenced by the boom in video games, movies, animations, and as you said, the digital era. We are very much, as you said, it's not so much that it's becoming more and more and more, but it's just more coagulated. It's more
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we're more immersed in it. It's not so much that it's overriding everything. It was at the 2000s. Late 2000s it was definitely like people were getting into a craze, and then early 2000s we're just starting to get out of that, where the general populace of people, because internet and computers and all that was a very niche thing for the longest time during the 90s and 80s, right? But it became accessible to everyone. Now we're at the stage where, okay, technology has its place
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to rediscover some things and whatever, but at the same time we've definitely immersed with it enough to know where its place is. And I think with voice acting, it is a bit of a fad for some people. Some
Mm-hmm.
people jump into it. Obvious voice actor scene. I
Yeah, I
see
gotcha.
many different. There is thousands. You can go to a casting call right now for a project
Somebody,
voiceover thing. What's up?
somebody in the chat asked. I think you touched on this briefly already, but how you started specifically your voice acting career, as in what were your first steps, etc.
You're cutting out, buddy.
Oh, sorry. He was asking how what were the first steps you took to start your voice acting career. Basically, I know we've touched on it a little bit, but
Yeah, I'll
specifically
expand into it.
from a practical perspective, like what that looked like.
Yeah, sure. From a practical perspective, basically, Blue Yeti microphone, as I mentioned, I don't use that anymore. I sold it to a buddy, generous buddy, killing big bugs. I know you're watching, Cody. You're probably watching. Um, Gratis to you because he usually spots me for games, even though he should save his money, but he's a bro. Um, whatchamacallit? When it comes to that first setup, though, it was a little bit of research on like Googling sound engineering and audio engineering, and knowing just some of it was just kind of some construction type stuff I knew already. But I just built a basic cardboard box. I tore up some like foam from miscellaneous sources. I padded that box. I put microphone inside. I voice acted. I just plugged it in. I had Audacity downloaded as my very first program. Now I have Reaper and Goldwave. And a lot of experience. I still hate audio editing. I've got a bushel's worth of work. I still got to edit and get in within the next few days. So anyone who gets into voice acting, the voicing part isn't the hard part. It's splicing, cutting up individual audio lines. You will want to blow your brains out eventually, unless you find a very efficient process to do it. I'm still on that quest, even after like 7 odd years I've been doing
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I
So,
imagine.
fuck. You make like videos and podcasts and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
You know exactly what I mean. Like editing is the most. It's not hard. It's just.
Tedious.
Yeah, it's tedious. It's you want to kill someone. You want to kill a chicken or something
Yeah,
after and eat it.
specifically like video editing. If you've got a lot of clips to put in there, it's just like aggravating to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's your patience goes to levels of fuck all, more or less. It goes into the diarrhea dumpster. It's bad, but fuck. Yeah, I started off like that, and then it's gradual improvement. So you make your booth bigger, you invest in more, better materials for the recording environment. If you don't have a booth and you don't want to piss on space, even a closet with clothes and blankets and stuff surrounding the microphone, all the cancel sound. And then just getting bigger and badder with equipment, and then it's just like a rolling ball. It's like you make a big ass snowball on a hill, and then you just kick it down, and then you just see how much snow accumulates. Occasionally, you'll need to guide it and make sure it doesn't hit a rock or something, and
Right. Yeah,
whatever,
absolutely.
right? But voice acting is definitely like it's a not a very profitable industry. I'm not gonna lie. Even the big boys and girls don't make a terrible lot of money unless they get royalties. And if you land a royalty agreement, I'm not gonna say what I got from Mordhau because I can't legally talk about that. But when it comes to voice acting, usually it's commission basis for most projects. And if you can score a royalty agreement, oh my goodness, you found the unicorn. You
Hmm.
found the unicorn, you butchered it, you put its head on its wall, and then you're admiring it in your house coat, eating a stick of butter or something like that. I don't know, whatever weird thing you would be into at that point, because at that point, life would probably become boring from the amount of money you would have.
Uh-huh.
So,
You know,
whatever the case,
it's interesting
go ahead.
because after I've heard you kind of demonstrate some of these voices, now I almost can hear bits and pieces of them in you, like amalgamating. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like
It's like, they're my children. They're spawning out of my vocal cords.
yeah, it's like
You
I
know, it's
hear a
just
little bit of the cruel in there when you're speaking, and I hear this not much of the young, but there's like the almost it's like a vocal crackle almost that's in the very back of your voice that kind of carries over, which I guess is part of like your signature sound, but I just like notice it. Are
pretty
you
much,
familiar
yeah. Like,
with some of the other voices in Mordhau at all?
yeah, like I'm familiar with George's, like the Raider.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have aptly noted, like, oh, this sounds like the voices from Day of Infamy, and that's because they are. George used his Scottish voice for the Raider. I believe he used a little bit close to his norm, like like he's a British native, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he's from England. He's an Englishman, but like he used George is also very much like he'll do like Russian accents and stuff like that. George Exley.
Mm-hmm.
He'll do accents and stuff like that, like Russian and whatever. But his philosophy, from what I've understood over the years, has been a case of like he definitely keeps to his native ranges, if that makes sense. Whereas I'm willing to experiment, where there's nothing bad about that. He sticks to what he knows will sound authentic, whereas I'm willing to go out on a limb and try a Chinese accent, even if I might not always be the best of it. I do research, mind you. I try to research Mandarin and Cantonese and stuff like that. I try to do my research and for some authenticity, but like uh definitely borderline racist some of the stuff I've done. But
Hey, I
I'm not
mean,
gonna lie.
if you're an anonymous, faceless figure on the internet, nothing you say can really be racist as long as it's not bigotry. But just like
Yeah.
imitating a sound isn't
Like
inherently.
Rise of the Reds, definitely a lot of the voices I did for that are borderline racist. Let's not beat around the bush here. It's very much whatever. But then again, that game was borderline racist too. It's just like, it's just like, General, we are reporting for duty right now. Like it's just whatever, right?
Yeah. No, I gotcha. Well, that's I guess the last question would be where do you see yourself going in the future, voice acting wise? Is it something that I mean, I know that for voice acting, it's almost like a forced part time thing because you're not feasibly, unless you're like at the very top of your game, going to be able to just do that full time.
Well,
But
it's for me like I am doing it technically full time. I'm combining it with other sort of creative arts type things like writing I do as well, and I'm trying to learn 3D modeling like Blender and some other things. So like I get paid as a writer and a voice actor right now, and that's how I make most of my living. The economy here where I live in central Alberta is really crap sack. I'm not gonna bullshit people. It's really garbage.
mhm.
There's jobs about, but you gotta bend over backwards for them. And it's like it's not the most ideal of situations here. A lot of people are not doing good here,
Hmm.
but it's I'm not gonna go further into that because it will probably this stream will probably turn political, and I don't want to get like left
Yeah, I
wing,
gotcha. I gotcha.
whatever, right wing, whatever. I don't care. I don't want to get involved in that. But needless to say, for me, I definitely I do voice acting basically full time, but like I'm working for 8 different clients right now. In terms of where I'm going in the future with that, I am the creative director and lead writer and voice actor with Negative Atmosphere at Sunscorch Studios, which is a Dead Space inspired spiritual successor, as it's often been called. The storyline's completely different. I can't legally talk too much about it, but the basis of that is there's a ship, there's some mysterious sort of outbreak, shit hits the fan. It follows a guy called Dr. Samuel Edwards and his plight of survival throughout the ship.
Gotcha. That's cool.
And that's as much as I'll say that. I'm voice acting in an upcoming game called Radio General, which is a going to be released on Steam. It's a game that follows a Canadian perspective for World War II, and the game's premise is that you are a commander in a tent, you have a map, and you have a radio. The only way to communicate with your troops and update the shit that's going on the map is by talking to them with voice command or text if you lack a microphone. But the voice recognition is actually really good on that game. I'm surprised. But I'm voice acting the soldiers in that, and that game will probably be coming out. I'm not sure on the official date, so don't officially quote me on this. But to kind of give like a ham pickled sense of whatever when it's coming out, probably Q1, like the first quarter of the year. I'd say maybe like January to March, around there.
Uh huh. Alrighty, gotcha. Uh,
One of the bigger projects I'm on right now.
anything else that you'd like? Anything else we should look out for seeing you in potentially or being involved with? Is there anything else that we should be looking out for? Oh, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, now I can hear you. What were you asking?
I was saying, is there any other projects of yours that we should be looking out for in the near to mid future?
Yeah, did you get the part where I was talking about Negative Atmosphere
Yeah.
and Radio General? Okay,
Mhm,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Interbellum. I have wrote a pen and paper RPG with Maxim Krylov and a few other writers. That is sort of, for those of you who have like played Dungeons and Dragons and other role playing systems and stuff like that, dice based role playing games and all that. Interbellum is gonna be coming out roughly Q1, probably January, I'd say. We were aiming for late December, but we still got some kinks to polish out, and that project is a little bit fraught with delays in its history, I'm not going to lie, but it's all been in the measure of getting a lot of content into one book.
Mm-hmm.
So the that project was already backed on Kickstarter. We're going to be releasing it on Drive-Through RPG. The setting of that, to kind of inform people what it's about, it's a World War I fantasy RPG.
Whoa.
So it's set in a fictional world that is sort of like a rough fantasy equivalent of Earth. And you have stuff like orcs with bolt action rifles. You have elf mages casting eldritch horrors and other bullshit on people. You have 4 major factions and a bunch of minor factions and groups that players can associate themselves with. And it's a whole big ass setting and system that me and Maxim Krylov and a few others like Thomas Urban and some other guys and whatnot have all developed. And Tago Doomer, otherwise known as Facili, our main artist, has been drawing and doing some stuff. I'll probably put some supply you all the links for that pretty soonish,
Okay.
just so people can get connected to that and follow us. But yeah, that's pretty much the biggest projects. Other than that, it's really just hopping around different content and stuff. Some things I can't talk about legally, but it's a lot of just different voice acting projects and stuff like that I'm doing. I am open for commissions as well if you guys want books read or anything like that. I take personal commissions like that. I'm not a high and mighty, almighty voice actor that's unreachable. I'm on Discord. You can PM me if you want me to read stuff. Obviously, I will be the judge of the content. I'm not gonna read your fanfics unless they're really good. but yeah, uh, I'm open for business on that front too.
Awesome. The thing that jumps to mind is I know a couple people in the community who make kind of machinima content for Mordhau, and I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if they could benefit. Previously, it's just been silent storytelling, which is cool. I love the way they do it, being able to create as much emotion as they do with like the what's in the game and just camera movements essentially. But I wonder if they could benefit from potentially having people who do voices that are recognizable by those who'd be viewing it as like I could imagine almost I have some ideas that would basically be if you were to think of like red versus blue, but using the character tropes that have already been kind of teased by the voice.
Established.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you were
Yeah.
somehow to be able to have an actual story be acted by the voices that everyone's already used to, I feel like that'd be kind of a surreal but also very cool project. Maybe I'll have to look
Yeah,
into
no,
more.
I'm perfectly down for that. I'd like to be commissioned for that, but I'm not going to charge an arm and a leg for that. These are no, these are hobbyist projects. So like my prices are pretty agreeable and flexible. I'm willing to negotiate that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And mods, certain mod like machinimas and stuff like that, and mods, I definitely want to be more involved with the community. Machinimas I'll probably charge for because that's usually people's own stories and stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
not a terrible lot. I'm open for business on that front, and like some mods I'll like depending on the project, I might even offer my services for free. I'm in my schedule and stuff like that. But I can definitely lend my talents for that. I've done similar work to that before for animations and machinima type videos and stuff like that. I've voice acted in crap loads of Skyrim and Fallout mods before too, so like
Mm-hmm.
it's not too dissimilar work. I'm open for business on that front, and honestly, I could use the hand on that because, yeah, we all gotta eat.
Yeah, exactly. Of
We
course.
all gotta be able to sleep under a roof. So that helps me keep that going. So yeah,
Yeah, of course. I
but
imagine a question that just came up for me is: do a lot of people expect you to do voice acting just complimentary just because you're a voice actor? Is that a thing that happens sometimes?
uh, sometimes yeah, it's kind of like an industry where it's definitely underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time, and that's somewhat a problem of myself and other voice actors too, where we undersell ourselves because we're desperate for a job. And this isn't just limited to voice actors; it's the game industry especially, like the video game industry especially, animation to a lesser extent, but it's still there with animation, but not as bad.
Mm-hmm.
But video games especially is a realm of underselling.
Mm-hmm.
You will I definitely have undersold myself in the past. And I'm willing still to undersell myself for some projects that are more passion driven, but there's a lot of people, devs and whoever. I'm not gonna name names and whatever, but like it definitely comes to a point where like, oh, we don't got a lot of budget, man. I don't know if we can afford this, and then like you want to get a deal of some sort because cheap work is better than no work
Yeah,
half the
exactly.
time. So like you will definitely undersell yourself sometimes.
But in some
Yeah,
cases, no work can be better than work without pay.
definitely. Yeah, no, I've definitely turned down projects before. I will work for free on certain projects if like they're a hobbyist mod or like an animation series I really really like.
Uh huh.
Um, I've done that in the past for sure, and like I had to start out. When you're starting out, no one's gonna pay your ass.
Right.
No
Yeah.
one's
No,
gonna
of
pay you
course.
unless like you invest hardcore into like equipment right off the bat, maybe.
And
But
you're really good.
I guess yeah, but that's like a pending thing on natural talent, and also you do accumulate skill. I definitely know that like in terms of audio editing, even the way like I posture it myself with a microphone, the way I speak into it, the way I set things up
Yeah, of course.
nowadays, it has definitely evolved over the years. So like but yeah, for me, I'm definitely want to make myself accessible to people who have their own projects. I'd love to be able to voice act in mods and all sorts of things for people. And again, I might even consider doing that for free. Um, it'll just be a case by case basis. But yeah, folks, free to contact me.
Yeah.
I'll put my Discord. I'm on the Mordhau Discord, the official Mordhau Discord. If you want to join that,
Mhm.
you can just PM me there. I don't have blocker or anything like that. Obviously, use your common sense and discretion where it don't send me like stupid like niche porn or something dumb like that and all that. Have civility, obviously, but
But if it's smart
um,
porn, then
maybe it depends on the content, but maybe, but
would you voice act a porno?
yeah. Tight neck pulling right there. Yeah, I've actually done some dirty stuff in the past. I'm not gonna
Have
lie
you? That's
about that.
fun. I think that's fun
Yeah,
personally. As long as
but
you
I'm not gonna say what.
No,
I'm
you
not
don't
gonna
need
say
to.
what.
I'm not going to go
But
seeking it out. But I would just think you can't help but smile, I would think, when you're doing something like that. If, as long as you don't take it too seriously. Well, I mean, you have to for the sake of the thing, but I feel like just the.
I've done some NSW work before, and I've definitely, I'll say this much, I've definitely I've read people, I've read some like stories and stuff like that. People have written ironically as well as unironically. I'm not going to state what those goddamn stories are, but
And if you did your job right, we'd never be able to tell it was you.
pretty much. Like I don't really care either way. I'm never gonna link that stuff on my like full on professional portfolio and all that for obvious reasons.
Uh-huh.
But just like sort of off the record thing, yeah. I feel like every voice actor worth their salt has done something of that regard. I'm
Uh-huh.
not gonna name names and whatever, but definitely yeah, fuck it, I'll name one name. I know Steve Bloom has been in some goddamn hentai before. Let's not beat around the bush here, folks. That big names have been in some things like that too. But whatever gets your rocks off. If you like hearing, "Hi, this is Steve Bloom, and I'm voicing Steve Bloom," if that gets your rocks off, whatever. You know,
I dig it. I dig it.
yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that's kind of all I have for you. If there's anything else that you'd like to plug or whatever, now's the time. I know that you've kind of been doing that, but I really appreciate you being willing to come on the show and talk about what you do and how you do it and how you have done it and how you think you'll continue to do it.
Yeah. Overall, I'll just give a flat like if people want to get to where I'm at in terms of voice acting, I'm just going to be very real with you. It's all investment with the equipment. I know there's some of you who might be interested for machinimas or just getting into the industry. I have probably sunk. I've been very economical with some things, with using some materials that are a lot cheaper than the standard fare, but still work just as good. But I've probably spent at least. My computer was about 1,700 Canadian when I first built it. My I probably spent maybe about 2 grand, 3 grand around there in total investment. That includes my office and everything that goes in it. So this has been over a case of 7 years, of course, but that's the sort of thing you got to remind yourself. Any type of artistic type of job, you're not going to be making big bucks unless you're like a big dog, and even then, it's kind of debatable. But you're doing it because you have a passion for it. And that's the thing I'll leave
I,
folks off with.
yeah, I was gonna make a pun of your name, but I didn't.
What was the pun? I'll rate if it's bad, I'll send a firing squad at you.
You said you had to be a big dog in the industry, and I was like, so a trench dog, if you will.
That's passable. Okay. All right. Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah. All that stuff is cumulative. And remember, if you're gonna get into it, make sure you actually have a passion for it.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
saddest thing is spending a fuckload of cash on something you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, guys. I feel like I waste a lot of money,
Yeah.
and you have a midlife crisis afterwards because your credit card debt or something's too high after buying fancy smancy microphone number 4. But yeah, so make sure you do it if you have a passion. Pursue it if you have a passion, but
Yeah,
make
absolutely.
sure you're on the ball with that.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for coming on the podcast. This will be up on YouTube for anybody who is interested, or for the people who obviously weren't able to make it to the live show. I know the timing was delayed because a lot of people were expecting this last week, but just circumstances got in the way.
Building my office. That's on me, folks.
All good though. But yeah, this will be up on YouTube. That's where most of the people consume these things, so it'll be there on the playlist and all that good stuff. But yeah, Kai, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it, and it was a lot of fun talking with
Alrighty.
you.
Yeah, likewise. You take care. I'll probably be playing Mordhau off and on next week or so. So I usually am on Prospero 7 if you want to know what server I usually go on, or any like West Coast, like West North American thing. The closer to Canada, basically.
Yeah.
Western Canada. I try to not die to ping.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, man, again for coming on the show, and yeah, have a good rest of your evening, man.
Yeah, likewise. Peace.